Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to be talking about the Mark Wilson course in magic. Now I know what you're thinking. David, you've already talked about that ad nauseum. I have talked about this book plenty. I think it's probably, well, I'm not going to say it's the best value in magic, but it's up in the top 10. Let's put it that way. I think the magic in here is stellar, and you can buy this book. I'm not sure what it's going for now, but it's something like $15 on Amazon or $20 on Amazon, something like that. Fantastic. Card magic, coin magic, rope magic, you name it, it's in here. Stage magic. Fantastic book. Now let me share with you a correspondence I had with a person who goes by the name of Jethro 1963. He wrote to me in the comment section under one of my other vlogs, and this is what he said. I think we all have great affection for our first book, and this is certainly one of, if not the first book for me. My real first was Gibson's Houdini on Magic, but my most influential first book was Hayes' Learn Magic. Oddly enough, I had a book that I didn't care for initially, but went back to time after time for the stories, George Anderson's Magic Digest. I have all the L&L and many of the Penguin videos you have mentioned, and they are excellent. Another book I brought later to round out my beginner library turned out to be better than expected, Magic for Dummies. I've never mentioned that on this vlog. It's a great book. It's hard to get. It's out of print, but it's a good book. It is different kind of book, and after my initial being taken aback, I found it quite good, and it is quite good. I think if I had to do it again or instruct somebody, I would recommend the book and R. Paul Wilson's video series, Royal Road to Card Magic. Many card people recommend that you start with the Royal Road to Card Magic. That was actually my first serious book on card magic, and I loved it. Personally, I'm not a card magic fan, but from what one could take away from the videos and book would put you in good stead with learning hand manipulations and enough knowledge of cards to enable you to perform anywhere, anytime. And that's really, really important. For me, that would be enough without needing the extensive card college if anyone wasn't a card worker. Of course, if you're a card worker, you're probably going to go ahead and read Card College. I would like to see a video on what was in your act that you built from the Wilson course and how you built it. Thus, the title of this vlog, an act based on Mark Wilson's complete course in magic. I think that would be interesting. He goes on to say, I think it would be helpful because most beginner books have similar material. So if someone watching didn't have Mark Wilson, they could possibly transfer that to something that they do have. And that's true. There's a lot of crossover in the beginner books. Your choice and range of material would be interesting, along with how you arrived at that. What worked, what didn't work, why. It would be cool to see what your 14-year-old mind... See, I had mentioned in the correspondence that I was 14 years old when I put my first acts together, and they were based on the Mark Wilson book. So now he's saying, well, what exactly was in that act? What was your thinking at 14 years old? How has your thinking changed now that you're 64? Are there any what was I thinking moments? I know that as a 14-year-old, I thought a finger chopper and a camera that shot out a coil mouse were entertaining to me. Actually, I still think the finger chopper is pretty entertaining. I've got a couple that I use, and I enjoy them, and so I still, this is going to be the thing, Jethro. I'm going to tell you that a lot of the material that I learned in Mark Wilson, I'm still doing to some extent. Now what I mean by that is what you're getting in here is a beginner routine. You're going to learn that routine, and probably from the very first time you perform it, you're going to begin to make modifications. If you're part of the clubs and you're demonstrating it for one of the clubs, the SAM, the IBM, the experienced guys there are going to suggest some modifications to you. And you're going to evolve those routines over a period of time. Case in point would be the cut and restored rope routine that's in the Mark Wilson course. It's very, very basic. And I remember presenting that routine to members of people at the magic shop or other friends that were doing magic, people in the SAM, and they were suggesting changes and modifications that made that routine stronger. So that's what you're going to do. But I also wanted to mention that back in those days when I was 14 years old, I remember getting a show. It was a church show, and it was a full auditorium. There's going to be a lot of people there. I was going to be one of many people that were performing. There were going to be mostly musical acts. I was the variety act. I was the magician. And so I put together a stage show based on Mark Wilson. I also had at that time a birthday party show. So I'm 14 years old. My parents are literally driving me to the gigs. And I'm setting up and I'm doing my show. I also did magic in school. I was doing magic for friends. All of that was coming out of Mark Wilson. Now, close-up magic. Let me break it into two basic parts. Close-up magic. This would be magic that I was pretty much doing either for friends at school or, and I want to get to this. At the time, I'm 14, 15 years old. I'm watching Doug Henning on television. And one of the things that Doug Henning did, he would do full stage illusions, these big, grand, beautiful things. And then he would come forward and he would sit cross-legged on the floor with some children around him, and he would do close-up magic. I was inspired by that. So when I went to do a birthday party show, I literally had my magic table, which I built, by the way. It wasn't the table I built. There is a table in here. There are production plans, building plans for a magic table in here. I didn't build that table. I don't know if it was Topps Treasury or something like that. I had another book that had magic table plans in it. And I built my own magic table from one of those plans. So I had my homemade magic table. Let me tell you this story real quick. So I'm not driving. I don't have access to a car. Where I lived, there was a lumber yard, I guess, half a mile away, maybe. So, I'm cutting lawns to raise money and stuff like that. And I walked down to Acres Lumber, is what it was. Acres Lumber on the corner of 2nd Avenue and Harford Road, I think it was. Maybe. Anyway, I walked down to Acres Lumber and I buy a 4 by 8 foot sheet of plywood. I believe it was 1/4 inch ply. And I put this thing on my head and I walked a half a mile home with a 4 by 8 sheet of plywood balanced on my head. I kid you not. And I made my magic table out of that. So there you go. So for birthday party shows, I set up my table and I put all my props in my table. What would be considered platform or parlor. Okay, that was my parlor stuff. I had a tiny little table that I put on the floor about 2 or 3 feet in front of my main table. It was on the floor, and I came and I sat down at that table. And I did close-up magic for the kids. They gathered around, the parents gathered around. It was very intimate. I've never done that since. You know, I think I learned, the first couple shows I did were they were in someone's living room. Family was there, kids were there. as I matured, I did bigger and bigger shows for bigger and bigger audiences, and I just never had that opportunity again. But let me tell you what I did when I sat down there. I would do the coin assembly that's in here. There's a coin matrix in here that's brilliant. I will put it against any coin matrix anywhere, anytime, and I would do that coin matrix. I would do what they call the impossible penetration. This is where you have cork here, and you're pinching two corks, and you pull them together and you pull them apart, and they appear to go through each other. I would do sponge ball routines. The sponge ball routine that's in here, I would do that. So let me just real quick, let me go through the close-up effects that are in here that I would do either in that setting or at school for friends. The slip force. You know, this is a basic force. You need to know how to force a card. So there are two really great forces in here. There are many more forces in here than that, but the two forces that I would most commonly use are the slip force and the Hindu shuffle force. Now, if you're thinking the Hindu shuffle force is obsolete, nobody uses it anymore, it's obvious, so on and so on. You know, I was at a corporate show outside, and this young man comes up to me after the show, and he wants to show me a card trick. So he shows me a card trick, and it's a nice card trick. And I said, well, let me show you one. And I took his cards from him, and I did a Hindu force. And I did a reveal based on that, and the kid loved it, and he said, I have no idea how you did that. And it was magic for him. So don't discount the Hindu shuffle force. It's a good force. So all right, so this is the slip force, the card through handkerchief. This is a brilliant routine where you have a card selected, it's mixed back in the deck, you wrap the deck in a handkerchief, you shake the handkerchief, and the selected card penetrates the handkerchief. It's brilliant. The out to lunch principle, in this book is called The Genie of the Lamp, because it's based on a genie with a cloud of smoke. It's a lamp with a cloud of smoke, and the person signs the lamp, holds it in their hand, and when they look at it, there's the genie there where the smoke was. It's a cute effect. Now, the out to lunch principle has many, many, many applications, and it's taught in here. The one hand, when I was a kid, I used to love flourishes, and there are a number of one hand cuts that are taught in here, and I used to do them just for fun. The coin assembly I mentioned, I did on a regular basis, either in close-up one-on-one, or actually for those birthday party shows I did, the coin matrix, the jumping rubber band. This is where you wrap a rubber band around two fingers and it jumps over to two other fingers. The variation, I don't think the variation's in here, but you wrap another rubber band around your finger so it appears like it's trapped. Don't discard that. It's an excellent effect. The ring on wand. You borrow a ring, you poke a pencil or a wand through a paper bag, and the ring appears on the wand magically. It's a wonderful effect. The flying match. I love this thing. You've probably seen it before. You tear a match out of a matchbook, you light it, you vanish it, and the burnt match reappears back in the matchbook. Excellent, excellent effect. Coin or glass through table. You probably all know this one. You have a coin. And you set it on the table. You take a glass and you cover it with a napkin. You explain that you're going to cause the coin to pass through the table. You cover the coin, magic, nothing. You cover the coin, smash, and the glass goes through the table. Wonderful effect, beginner effect. Don't discard it. And the sponge balls, as I mentioned, all of that stuff is in here. All of that stuff I did. Now let's talk for a moment about platform and stage. When I was a kid, teenager, getting help to do my magic shows was pretty easy to do. Now that I'm an adult, forget about it, right? Forget about it. I either pay somebody a premium fee to assist me, or I can just forget about it. When I was a kid, I used to ask the neighborhood girls, you want to help me with a magic show? And I had them standing in line. So it was fairly easy to get help. So a number of platform shows that I used to do with some neighborhood kid, And one of the illusions that I built, I made it out of cardboard. I collected boxes. I walked all over the neighborhood. I went to the grocery store. I brought home cardboard boxes, and I made the victory carton illusion based on the plans in this book. The exact dimensions are given in the book. If you're not familiar, you have 2 boxes sitting on stage. You pick up one, you set it down. You pick up the other and you drop it inside of the one you set down, and then you produce a person out of that. It's a brilliant illusion. I did it. I tell you what, I started doing that when I was 14. I went to college. I went to a community college before going to the university. I studied broadcast journalism at the community college level, and I was taking a class in broadcast journalism, and I performed that trick on television, and I did it a number of times because we did a number of takes, and it still fooled the people in production. So it's a great little illusion. I did in my platform show, I did the Hindu Shuffle Force, and then I did what's called, in here it's called the bigger card trick. Now here's the way this works. You force your card, mix the deck, throw it in a paper bag. You reach in and you pull out, say, the 3 of clubs. You say, is that your card? No. Well, is it bigger or smaller? It's bigger. Oh, it's bigger. Drop it in, pull out the 5 of diamonds. No, it's bigger. Pull out the king of clubs, and that's the selected card. The king of clubs is a jumbo card. So it's a comedy bit, but a great little number. Now, you're probably all familiar with the sucker torn and restored napkin, right? Where you tear up a napkin and restore it, and oh, here's the explanation, and you restore the torn pieces as well. It's a brilliant trick. It's in here. Afghan Bands. Afghan Bands is a brilliant trick. It's a classic. It's in Tarbell. It's all over the place. I used to do Afghan Bands. There's an effect in here called the envelope stand. It's basically a banknote. It's a way to force the contents of an envelope. So what you have is a stand, and you have 5, 6, whatever envelopes that sit in the stand, and you can determine the contents of the envelopes. So it's very much a banknote type effect, and I built one out of cardboard when I was a teenager, and then later I built one out of wood, and I love the thing. I don't do it anymore because I've learned to do banknote style effects without any apparatus whatsoever, which I think is better, but I think it's still a great effect. I also, believe it or not, as a teenager, I did some mentalism. I did the 3-way test. Now, you might be familiar with this. I'm not going to tip the method, because you would, if I said the method, you would automatically know. But here's the deal. You have 3 objects selected, and you have predicted those 3 objects. It's just fantastic. I also did a psychometry effect from Mark Wilson that used, again, I don't want to tip the method. The method's in here. Basically, you have 4 or 5 participants placing something in an envelope, and you're able to determine who the object belongs to. So it's a great effect. The stamp album that works on the coloring book principle is explained in here, and I used to do it. I still do the coloring book. I still do that effect. By the way, there is a way to do that for adults. If you make sort of a spiritualist, ghostly kind of a presentation out of it, spirit writing type of thing, it works for adults if you want to do that. The comedy cut and restored rope. Now here's the way this works. first of all, you have to do pre-show work. So here I am, 14 years old, doing pre-show work. I get somebody, and back in these days, now this isn't true anymore, but back in the 70s, you still had people wearing ties. So you get somebody and you give them a raggy old tie that you have a duplicate of. I mean, you could pick up ties from the Goodwill for pennies. So you get duplicate ties, and you get them to put this tie on, and then you have them drape the rope around themselves. You just sort of absent-mindedly pick up the rope and the tie, and you cut through the rope and the tie, and it's hysterical. The audience thinks you accidentally cut their tie. So you have them take the tie off, the rope off, you put it all in a bag, magic, the tie comes out restored, the rope comes out restored. It's a funny bit in Mark Wilson Course of Magic. I mentioned the cut and restored rope. The basic routine is in here. You evolve that rather quickly, even if you don't have people helping you, which I did, but you'll evolve that rather quickly. The square circle, how to build a square circle, is in here, and I built one and I used it. Billiard ball manipulation, a basic, decent routine is in here. I performed the Mark Wilson billiard ball routine for my high school class. I did it in high school, and they loved it. There's also a basic cups and balls routine in here that is excellent, and I used to perform that cups and ball routine as well before I learned the Vernon routine. So, I hope this gives you some idea. Now, Jethro, I didn't quite give you an act, but the things that I mentioned were the things that I was performing when I was 14 years old. And I learned them from this book. So am I an advocate of this book? Oh my goodness, I just don't think you can get a better deal in magic. I really don't. I still think it's the best thing going for a beginner. I mean, you look at Tarbell. Tarbell is 8 volumes. It's just chock full, and it's confusing, and I think that's when you've decided that magic is your life and magic is your passion, you're going to pick up Tarbell, you're going to study Tarbell. In the meantime, you learn the stuff that's in here, and it will treat you well. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this. Please subscribe down below. Please comment. I love your comments. Thank you. Have a nice day, everyone.